Zulkifli Abdul Razak, accompanied by the University Management Committee. Please rise. Brothers and sisters, let us sing together the national anthem, Negaraku. Thank you. Please be seated. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Praise be to Allah, the cherisher and sustainer of the worlds, and blessings be on our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his family and his companions. Honorable Emeritus Professor Tan Sri Datuk Zulkifli Abdul Razak, Rector of the International Islamic University, Malaysia, and Honorable Puan Sri Datin Masrah Abidin, respected University Management Committee, Deans, Directors, Senior Officials, and staff of IIUM, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and a very good morning to all. Honorable Rector, brothers and sisters, in order to invoke the blessing of the Almighty, please allow me to start the program this morning by inviting Sheikh Muhammad Asfandia Diwala Khan from Salpet to recite Al-Hajj, verse 1 to 5.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم إن زلزلة الساعة شيء عظيم. يوم ترونها تذهل كل مرضعة عما أرضعت وتضع كل ذات حمل حملها وترى الناس سكري وما هم بسكري ولكن عذاب الله شديد ومن الناس من يجادل في الله بغير علم ويتبع كل شيطان مريد كتب عليه أنه من توليه فأنه يضله ويهديه إلى عذاب السعير يا أيها الناس إن كنتم في ريب من البعث فإنا خلقناكم من تراب ثم من نطفة ثم من علقة ثم من علقة ثم من مضغة مخلقة وغير مخلقة لنبين لكم ونقر في الأرحام ما نشاء إلى أجل مسمى ثم نخرجكم طفلا ثم لتبلغوا أشدكم ومنكم من يتوفي ومنكم من يرد إلى أرذل العمر ومنكم من يرد إلى أرذل العمر لكي لا يعلم من بعد علم شيئا ومنكم من يرد إلى أرذل العمر لكي لا يعلم من بعد علم شيئا وترى الأرض هامدة فإذا أنزلنا عليها الماء اهتزت وربت فإذا أنزلنا عليها الماء اهتزت وربت وأنبتت من كل زوج بهيج صدق الله العظيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Shukran jazilan, Ustaz, for the beautiful recitation. Distinguished office bearers, brothers and sisters, I would like to extend a warm welcome to everyone, and I'm sure all of us are happy and excited to be gathered today for our first Al-Liqa Al-Jamaie post-MCO. The highlight of Al-Liqa today would be the International Green Gown Awards. These awards are supported by the United Nations Environment and are open to any university and college across the world. And I am delighted to announce that we are the finalists for 2 nominations, 2020 Sustainable Institution and 2020 Benefiting Society. Now let us take a look at the Green Gown Awards video.
In the last 2 years, we have been trying to manage to change the university into a university that is truly international and sustainable. In this way, we are able to move as much as possible nature of education for the future by changing not only the structure of the university, but also the knowledge base as far as the university is concerned. In other words, IIUM is moving into a whole institutional transformation, taking with it the national education philosophy, sustainable development goals, United Nations 4 pillars of learning, and other very important foundation as far as the university is concerned.
Among the things we do to transform IIUM as a sustainability institution was to rename some of the offices and centers to suit their functions to promote sustainability agendas such as responsible research, student development, community engagement, and knowledge for change. We also introduced holacratic leadership and management, where everyone in the campus is empowered and entrusted to carry out their sustainability initiatives.
Within a year, the impact of 29 flagship projects created could clearly be seen in 5 areas. First, the breaking down of academic administrative silos in a transformational way. 2, the building of voluntary teams and teamwork across the academic structure based on shared aspirations. 3, allowing for greater creativity and social innovation in translating SDGs into local context. 4, enhancing community engagement in co-problem solving based on SDG. And lastly, capturing data and information to be transformed into knowledge and wisdom.
The formal classroom education is now linked to our co-curricular activities, which give more meanings to our community engagement projects through learning to know, learning to do, learning to be, learning to live together, and learning to become.
I hope you have been able to see the G's of transformation that we are trying to do for the last 24 months using the whole institutional transformation and also carving a new idea of what a human university is all about as a kind of novelty for the future.
Distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, without further ado, I would like to respectfully invite Honorable Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Datuk Zulkifli Abdul Razak, Rector of IIUM, to deliver his speech.
Terima kasih. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu syafil anbiya mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajmain la haula wala quwwata illa billah. Sister Ernie, respected University Management Committee, deans, directors, senior official staff of Gombak, Kuantan, Gambang, Sultan Ahmad Shah Medical Center at IIUM and Pagoh campus, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Let me first of all start with our gratefulness and gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving us the opportunity to meet for the second time this year. I remember we met on the 20th of January to talk about Al-Liqa, what we need to do for this year. But somehow rather in between there are a lot of interventing circumstances and events happening that we thought we should meet again to somehow rather revise some of the plans that we did. In a way, the video, which was a 2-minute video that we were asked to present for the final listing, as it were, on the 8th of July in New York, where they will decide who is the champion as far as the sustainability institution of the year is concerned. That 2-minute video somehow rather summarizes what we have done for the last 24 months and becomes a kind of a recognition for the United Nations environment to select which is a better university around the world in the context of sustainability. I'm indeed very happy and very proud that we have arrived at that particular stage, not knowing within the 24 months that we are able to garner such sort of support. That is to me a very important recognition, not from us, but from other people around the world that has seen what we have done in the short period of 24 months. What is important for me is that symbolizes what we can do together. I think the whole video is about people working together, putting their heads and minds and moving forward as what we envisage the university should be. It is not about ranking. I'm not here to belabor on this, but there is no KPI set up for this. We just need to report what we have done, and then they will select which is the best 10 universities for the finalists, and inshallah on the 8th of July, they will decide which is the best university. And we hope, we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For those of you who are good in making du'as, mayang hajat, exercise that please for the next 2 days, so that on the 8th of July, we hope we will come out somewhere on the top, if not the very top, so that this could be an evidence of what we have done together, and we can demonstrate to not only Malaysia, but people around the world that an Islamic international university has the capacity to garner a place where it ought to be. So it's a big mission for us, and inshallah, we will be there in one way or another. But today what I intend to do to you is basically to go into another thinking process of where we want to be and how we're going to do there, given all the intervening processes that we've gone through. I've made it, we have made it, I think we have made it, inshallah, but we want to make it real. Real in the sense that we are now globally present. We have been an international university, now we want to be a global university. To me, there's a distinct difference between an international university and a global university, and we'll go into this. Now we want to make it one. We are global and also international at the same time. But to be global, they need to feel that we are there. Our presence must be felt. In other words, we must be there all the time in engaging in whatever global issues that there are there. And some of this we will take it on as far as university is concerned. Now, we are now talking not only about IIUM. As you can see, this is our new designation. We are part of the international or the regional centers of expertise on sustainable development. I've explained this to you perhaps some time ago. In the year 2005, when the United Nations University decides whether this conventional structure of university will be able to deliver sustainable development, the answer is no. And therefore, they created a new structure called the RCE, which is a regional center of expertise on education for sustainable development, so that the structure becomes a different structure altogether, away from the conventional university. And they have got processes where they can appoint the university that have met their criteria, and right now there are less than 200 universities, and IIUM is the first Islamic university to be listed in that particular list. And therefore our mission is to make sure that this structure is a structure that will deliver sustainable development from the Islamic perspective, not only from the United Nations perspective. And this is the thing that we want to talk to you about, and this is where I think the United Nations University will come every 3 months to see what we have done, what lesson that could be learned, how we can then extrapolate this to other parts of the world, given the other structures or given the other regional centers across the world, including Europe, including US, and also other parts of Asia and Latin America. If you were wondering where IIUM is all this name, we are not there, but we are the host of what they call the Greater Gombak regional centers. We were debating, we wanted to put Kuantan in, we wanted to put Pagoh in, but the geographical dimension did not allow us to do that. And therefore, we need to settle for a name called the Greater Gombak, which actually includes Kuantan and also Pagoh in this particular respect. What does it mean? It means that we need now to work across boundaries, across what we call geographical demarcation, and also across cultures and all other structures that is now inhibiting the university to move forward, right? So if you see this inherently means that IIUM is a host. We are the host, we actually run the secretariat, and we work with other NGOs at the same time. Right now, more than 20 NGOs around Kuala Lumpur, around maybe sometime in Kuantan and also other parts of the Gombak, greater Gombak sort of ideas. Yeah? We will elaborate on that a little bit more when we do the Istidamah, I think, in a week or so that we understand what the RCE is all about. Now, on the 20th of January, when I talked to you, we talked about celebrating the year 2020. At that particular time, I remember the first week of January, we were given a recognition called the Al-Khawarizmi sort of award, recognizing the university as the best university in the context of Islamic education, in the context of Islamic perspective. We were given that early, and I'm very happy about it. But 2 years later, 2 or 3 weeks later, we were given another recognition on the question of Myra. Yeah? If I remember well, we have got a 5-star Myra, but our numbers are maybe about 87, around that. Mean to say another 15 or so, we will go into the 6-star ranking. So we have made an assessment earlier that we are now prepared to move into the 6-star ranking, inshallah, in the year 2021, if not the 2020, and how we need to move together as a university to create and garner a lot more activities so that the point for Myra becomes also another distinction as far as the university is concerned. Apart from Myra, there are 2 Myras, I think 2018 and 2019, if I'm not mistaken. We have moved up as the year go by, and this is where we want to now target on how to go into the 6-star ranking. Apart from that, I think we have got also the recognition for the RCE, which came on the 1st of April. And then, quite unexpectedly, we were listed on the 2 finalists, one on sustainable development, and the other one is on benefiting the society. And the benefiting society is about students from KAED in particular, how they run their activities that benefited society as one of the criteria for this particular award. So all in all, I think between then and now, we have managed to get 6 sort of recognition, 3 locals and 3 international. And the international one is something that we didn't bid for. It is just recognized by different institutions and putting us where we are supposed to be. And I hope this will be the way forward as far as the next couple of months in the year 2020. Yeah? Now, these are some of the things that was captured in the brochure as far as celebrating year 2020 is concerned. Now, for this time around, I want to add one more dimension that is making it real globally. I think we have got a stage to be recognized globally, and the issue is now, what are we going to present to the world as we move on beyond 2020? What sort of activities are we going to concentrate on? What sort of academic programs we're going to launch? What sort of research are we going to embark on? Yeah? What sort of community service are we looking at? These are all the potential areas that we need to work together and plan as we move into the year 2020 and beyond. Let me start by acknowledging this prestigious recognition by the United Nations University. I want to underline the United Nations University because this is not a commercial enterprise. Most of the ranking that all of us are sometimes obsessed with are a commercial enterprise. In other words, you need to pay money to get into the ranking. Sometimes we need to pay a lot of money to be ranked. In this particular case, I don't think we pay a single cent. Yeah? When we apply for it, and when they recognize that we are already for the application, all we need to do is to demonstrate to them what we have done, beyond just KPIs. And again, I want to underline, it is not just about numbers. It is about impact. What sort of impact do we do, and what sort of impact do other people feel in the context of working together with them? Yeah? For this, I want to distinctively acknowledge the Development Office, where the Sejahtera Center for Sustainability and Humanity was there. They basically worked the whole, plan of putting this up. I think more than 3 months working on it, submitting it to them, and then they resubmit it to us and make their comments, and then we put all our, new information as they requested it, and on the 1st of April, we got the distinction. Yeah? So Dato' Wan, being the head for the Development Office, thank you very much. But then it is not limited to them. The moment you get the RCE, it is everybody's effort to sustain it and to make it a kind of a university-wide, community-wide sort of venture that we all must support to sustain the regional centers of expertise for sustainable development. It is for real because this is a certificate signed by the Secretary General of the United Nations University to show that it is a kind of recognition formally given by them. All right? Now, in a way, I think we have to look at our structures again. Earlier, we have got 3 different structures. We have changed OCAP, so that OCAP will go into advocacy, mainly in trying to promote what we are for, what we are here for, and how do we going to move it. Yeah? We have created the Knowledge for Change Center, so that we are now looking very much at how do knowledge transform university. It is not just about the structure per se. How does the substance becomes important as far as university moving forward in an advancing way, and that's why we word the word advancement there at the same time. Yeah? And last but not least, I think very important to look at strategy again, and the strategy is not just a one-piece strategy, but it's a total strategy that involves the whole university, and hence what we call the whole institution transformation. I think that is the key phrase, if I'm not mistaken, why they look at us, because there's not many universities around the world, as far as I know, attempt to change the whole institution at the same time. Often it is a piecemeal, either by faculty, either by department, or either by programs, but here we are attempting the whole institution, and certainly there is something which is not easy. But all of this now needs to be related to what we call the new focus, and that is the regional centers of expertise for sustainable development. We need now to see how we can strategize, so that each time when we were evaluated by United Nations, we find that all the 3 structures and more than that is also in line with what we are trying to do. And I think this is the planning that we are looking at. At the end of the day, how do we become a global player? That will be the question that I'm asking. We have created a stage for ourselves. What performance are we going to do? Where are the players? Who are the singers? Who are the dancers? Where is the musician? These are all something that we need to create within the next 2 years, so that the performance that we do are really the performance of professional standards on a global stage. It's different ball game altogether, different mindset altogether, and different performance altogether. That, I think, is a new mindset when I talk about making it real globally, that we are recognized, that we have got a global sort of criteria to push us forward and to move us into the global scene as such, right? So these are discussions that we're going to have, and how we're going to do this is how I hopefully can elaborate as we go along. Yeah? So the campus itself must be a global campus. When I talk about a global campus, it is not just about the structure or the physical outlook. It must include the values that the global world are looking for example, like recycling. Right? How sustainable is it as far as this global campus is concerned? Yeah? It is not just about the mind, but it's a mind and the heart, and how do we manifest this as the members of the global campus, right? And certainly, how do we value diversity among ourselves? And that diversity is part of this global campus idea. How do we actually balance the activity that we've got? If you read here, life is a journey on a bicycle, you should know how to balance. If you want to ride a bicycle, balancing is one of the important. If you don't know how to balance, you will just drop or you will just fall. All right? So balancing is a key word when you talk about the global campus, and how do we actually create this balance between all the things that we do, and that will be a key issue as far as moving forward is concerned. At the end of the day, we will also try to manifest, this is one of the ideas that we talked about earlier, how do you make this campus a zero carbon campus? That will be a global aspiration around the world, not only for campuses, but for cities, for nations, and also for continents around the globe. That will be one of the key marks that we want to look at. And therefore, we had a discussion with Kaed the other day. How do you reduce, for example, the number of traffic coming into the university? How do you actually reassign parking lots? How do you actually move vehicle from one place to another so that the carbon emissions within the campus become minimum as far as possible? Yeah? So that at the end of the day, the campus become what I call a people's campus, that we can move freely, that we can actually do not have to wear our face mask now, apart from the COVID sort of issues. Yeah? We can breathe better. And indeed, we have seen this. When we were locked down for 3 months, we see a lot of things happening in the campus. We have been trying to capture this in one of our mastheads, where we find now the monitor lizards walking on the streets. 2 weeks ago, the crane from the zoo apparently stopped in the campus again. I see from my place the wild fowl, the wild chicken coming out. Yeah? So the animals are coming back again because the environment is now better suited for them. The moment we reduce our activity and we allow other creatures to participate in this campus itself. And that's the kind of campus that we envisage to be, the garden of knowledge and virtue, beyond just the physical structures, but again, getting other species and other life form together with us. Yeah? And this is one of the dreams that I think we're going to work on, inshallah, for the next 2 years or so. But if you think this is a dream, this is one of the statistics that even surprises me. On the 5th of June, when we celebrate the World Environment Day, we look at some of the data that we have got. What have we done in the last 2 years in trying to show that our campus are also, quote-unquote, environmental friendly? Now, I would like to quote some of the things that were shown to us. For example, we have managed to reduce the carbon emission in such a way that it is equivalent to planting 260,000 trees. That's the amount of emission that we have managed to reduce within the 2 years. We do not realize it, but the amount of activities that we have done together in a collective manner has made us into that. And these are the figures that United Nations and UNESCO will be very interested in. How this university is able to do this? What sort of activities, what sort of programs that there are some amount so that finally we will get the benefit as far as that's concerned. There's others, the one that also surprises me is basically in terms of saving. Yeah? In terms of saving as far as the various activity that is concerned, in captivating waste, for example, we are able to save as much as 60,000 ringgit a month. Is it a month or a whole? I'm not too sure, but there is a huge saving for this, right? And not recorded in this, for example, the use of electricity. Our electricity bill, if I'm not mistaken, is 1.6 million a month. But under the lockdown, when we all begin to, use things quite sparingly, I think we have reduced our electricity bill almost 50%. We are paying 800,000 a month, meaning that we have saved another 800,000. So these are the new values that I think we need to look at as we move forward. How do you sustain this? How do you make it better so that the campus become a global sustainable campus? And that's the vision that we want to move forward, and we are able to do this. This is no longer a dream, it's no longer an abstract thinking, but it is something that we have manifest and to make it real as far as moving forward on the environment and the ecology is concerned, right? So the overall impact is something that we want to look at in the year 2020. How do you move forward from 2019? We talked about this, the garden of knowledge and virtue. The second phase is about to make it a productive and a clean garden of knowledge. Yeah, we now have got a lot of gardens around, but we need to now to concentrate the garden to make sure that it's professionally run, to make sure that it's productive, to make sure that whatever we plant contributes to the environment that we are trying to nurture. Right? that is the other game plan that we're looking at. And certainly the question of cleanliness, yeah, keeping the air clean, not only it is within the Islamic perspective, but also within the global perspective, to keep the environment clean, to keep everything else clean, so that we begin to see other creatures coming out, participating the way we saw when we have the lockdown under the MCO. These are the other areas that we are looking at, and I think students have come to see me and they say they want to participate in this, and if we can mobilize 30,000 students, I think we can get this done sooner than later. Yeah? We also talked about this last time, but we now use the renewed normal sort of argument. Yeah? How do you actually save, not only in terms of waste, but also energy and water and so on and so forth. We have talked about this. Yeah? And we are now talking about cleaning, but this is more impetus for us now because the coronavirus sustained and survived on dirty environment. So toilets, bathrooms, whatever we have repeatedly said that how we're going to move into a new normal in trying to maintain this as best as we could, so that not only it is clean for the sake of being clean, but also at the same time taking away the dangers of other infection coming into play. Yeah? This is again something that is not new, but we need to move in earnest because now there's a compelling reason why we need to do this as much as possible. Right? This is a new thing that we are trying to also advocate, and we have done this quite well. But we have done this poster because there is a kind of a mismatch as far as I can see. Nation and keep on talking about social distancing when we actually mean physical distancing, right? And so when we have got an opportunity to meet the minister, I think in Pago, we mount this particular bunting or posters to tell her that the word is physical distancing and not social distancing as such. Yeah? And why this is important? Because the concepts are quite different. The concepts of social distancing comes from the days of the days of leprosy. Maybe the 5th century Roman Empire, when they have people who are having leprosy at a particular time, there's no treatment, just like we have no treatment now. The best that people can do is to move away, to isolate themselves from the lepers so that they don't get infected by it. And the idea is very discriminatory in its effect. When we want to talk about physical distancing, when we take social distancing, we are beginning to discriminate. And therefore, the whole issue of racism, the whole issue of religion, the whole issue of culture becomes embedded into this word social distancing. And this will be the outcome later on. We will not feel it now, yeah? But the moment you get vaccines, you'll see that people are using this social distancing as part and parcel of discriminatory behavior and discriminatory act. We want to overcome that, and therefore we want to use the real term, and that is physical distancing. And then when I go to schools and I ask the youngsters and say, what is social distancing? Most of them will roll their eyes and do not know how to answer. But when I talk to them, what is physical distancing? Then they quickly put their hands up and say, this is physical distancing. Yeah? That 1 meter that they need to observe. So understanding it from the educational point of view make it easier so that they can create a culture among themselves and how to move forward if this indeed is a new normal that we're going to go. Right? So we need to campaign on this. We need to educate other people as far as what is the new terminology, because that's the role of the university, to educate people on ideas which is new but which is not taken on in the real sense of the word. Yeah? But we want to encourage social bonding. In other words, people need to work together, people need to consolidate, people need to become one unified group so that we can together fight the coronavirus sort of infection around us. And that's a different story altogether, where we need to work together beyond race, beyond creed, beyond culture, and so on and so forth. And indeed, the whole humanity needs to come together before we can even talk about how successful we are in the context of breaking the transmission of coronavirus. And therefore, what we see in the US, what we see in Brazil, what we see in other parts of the world is not something that is good for us, because as humanity we have not created that unified sort of platform that we need to work as far as creating a solidarity among human beings, right? So I want to very quickly give you a kind of a big picture how I look at this whole issue. Been talking about this. I think I've talked about this at one online seminar organized by Asahil lately, and the kind of feedback I got was very encouraging. I just sent in another essay for UNESCO talking about the same model. Again, they have accepted that essay to be published. So I thought I might as well share with you. Some of you have heard this and seen this before. Yeah? If you talk about the pre-COVID era, meaning before COVID comes into the picture, that we were doing previously, I think education is just about three things. How to create employment in the context of manpower, hence we talk about employment, employability, and the marketability and so on, right? And that's the manpower issue. Ministry always tells us, yeah, you must meet certain numbers of employability and so on and so forth. And from there, I think mainly people will talk about innovation, particularly technical innovation, and this is part and parcel of training the mind, training knowledge as far as thinking is concerned, so that we can create new things, create a better world, as it were, and create also a better economy through innovation, or innovation economy, they call it. Yeah? And at the end of the day, we are all now managing a kind of a mechanistic sort of portfolio, which is basically technology, and particularly high technology. So we talk about all those things that we are talking about now, the 5G and so on and so forth. And that will be the 3 M's that at the end of the day define what education is as far as I can see. Yeah? And at the end of the day, that education is all about economics. It's about the value that you bring in monetary terms. And that is translated into a kind of a livelihood. So we talked about how successful we are if our livelihood is good. All right? If you get good work, if you get good sort of perks, then you are seen to be, quote unquote, to be successful. And the rush for that now becomes almost net-breaking. Everybody wants to get the best of everything else and competing with one another. Nothing wrong, yeah, but that's not what education is all about. And education tells us this kind of education is what we call the education without soul. We compete with one another. Sometimes we vanquish our own fellow human beings because we want to be ahead of everybody else. It is just about us or our community or our country rather than the whole world, as we see today when we talk about the coronavirus. Yeah? That, to me, is a limitation of what education is today. Suddenly, when we go into the phase of, so we begin to define our works from KPIs, the numbers that you need to arrive at, be it research, be it whatever it is, there must be a number that you meet, right? And these numbers are often given top-down to you. You have no choice. If you want to be successful, the organization will tell you, this is what you need to do. If you don't do this, you will not be successful in our eyes. And therefore, you need to somehow or other conform. And this conformance sometimes is met with rebellions. The conformance sometimes is met with many other unethical practices. I still remember when I was in USM, when I talked to my staff and said, you need to do 2 publications a year. Somebody raised up his hand, Tan Sri, I can do 10. Why do you want to stop at 2? Only you don't ask me how do I arrive at 10. If you want numbers, I'll give you numbers. Yeah? Don't ask me where do I get the ideas, where do I get the information, how do I assemble it. That's none of your business because you are not interested. You're only interested in numbers, and I will give you the numbers. So you're opening up another potential way of people working in a very devious way, in a very unethical way, in a very immoral way also sometimes. And that is to me what the shortcomings of this model is all about. Yeah? So we've been arguing that this is not the model that will sustain university, particularly as university of this nature that talks about value often than not. How do we go and how do you manage this? Yeah? So as we argue this, alhamdulillah, God has put in the korobit factor into this. And suddenly we see the argument change. People do not talk about just the 3 M's, or the 4 M's as I talked it, people talk about other things at the same time. It's not just enough to talk about manpower if you don't relate it to the whole survival of humanity. Yeah? So it's not just about you anymore, it's about everybody else around you in a global sense. And to do that, you must have a value called sympathy. You don't have that value of sympathy, you do not care about other people around you. And where does this value sympathy comes in our education system? If you cannot sympathize with other people, then you just don't care. All right? It could be as far as Yemen, it could be as far as Syria, it could be somewhere else in Palestine. They are not beyond our reach, but we can sympathize with them at least, because they are part of the human structure. In our case, they are part of our brothers and sisters. We can sympathize, we can feel how they are feeling, and that is what I think humanity is all about. Yeah? So we begin to extend the whole idea of an individual or a community to a whole community of the world, in fact, the universe. And then I think that's a bigger change, what the COVID has told us. Yeah? We cannot just talk about the mind, we need to talk about the heart, because the heart will teach you another value of empathize. If you feel it within your heart, then you will make a point to go out of your comfort to help them. This is where community engagement becomes important. You will leave your account room, you will leave the comfort of your living, you will then work with them, toil with them, sweat with them, and understand exactly what is going on, and experience the kind of bitterness, the kind of challenge that they are going through. You just don't imagine it anymore. Yeah? And this is where we begin to see people moving out of their environment. They don't care about where they are, they don't care who they are, they don't care even at what status they are in, they will move out and work with these people. And that empathy is what we have gone through when we go to Ramadan, I thought. The Ramadan this time was quite different. It is not the Ramadan of the years where we actually still, quote-unquote, enjoyed. The Ramadan this time was quite a bitter Ramadan, that we begin to cut down on the many things that we are entitled to because we want to empathize with the people who are undergoing all these things that, the MCO and the COVID virus are putting onto them, although we are lucky that we are not as bad as they are. So we begin to empathize. There's a second value that education must have. If we don't empathize, then we will not go out to the village to teach the youngsters in the village who have no opportunity to have education. Yeah? You don't go out and give whatever you need to give as far as food is concerned, for example. And that's why the university, I'm very proud, that organize a lot of this giving of things that other people are entitled to. Right? And finally, when we talk about high tech, we also need to talk about high touch. High touch to me is the next value that we talked about. It is about compassion. Yeah? As Muslim, we always talk Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, the merciful and the compassionate. If that's the value that God has, then what is it to us? And compassionate to me means it is beyond love anymore. It's unconditional love that you give to these people because you need to give. It is part of your duty to do so. It doesn't really matter we have a little, but we share the little that we have. So these are the values that I think that is missing in education. And therefore education becomes a kind of a rat race. I have and I will not give it to you because I want to exceed the many things that you do not have. And sometimes I'm advantageous because I'm born to be with that advantage to me. And I use that advantage then to compete with people who are not in that position. And I think that's not fair. And that's why I am very happy that 21 of our administrators went to Gontor to see how do these people in Gontor works and actually interplay among themselves. And we come back and we say, these are some of the things that we also need to infuse within our university. We are very much luckier as compared to Gontor, but Gontor has something that we do not have that we want to infuse them. It's not about copying them, but we need to learn from the best. Yeah? And this is part and parcel of learning as such. So we have now got into these other ideas of how education has to be organized from the 3M to the 3H. But what is missing in this particular context is how do you actually work together? When I look at the mission of IIUM, the 3 I's, we should almost like the 3H. When we talk about internationalization, I think we can equate it almost to humanity. Although then we need to work a little bit around it. Yeah? When you talk about integration, we need to find out how the heart and the minds can work together. All right? And when we talk about high touch, it's a question of how do you put Islamic value in so that technology becomes humanized at the same time. I think there is a mirror reflection on what the 3M is all about. It gives more meaning perhaps in this particular context. But that's not the end of the story until we are able to humanize life at the same time. So it's not just about livelihood, it's about living. It's about life at the same time. Yeah? Although livelihood is important, but sometimes livelihood is good, but life is bad. Yeah? As I digest whatever was read this morning, the 3 words that strike me is convulsion of the day, yeah? Drunken riot. Suddenly I saw last night when the pub in the UK was open, it's almost like a drunken riot, that kind of a display of behavior. Yeah? And the last one that strikes me was the feeblest age. And this is where I think we need to begin to humanize technology again, humanize education again, so that the human spirit, the human dignity, the humanitarian value become sustained. And how do you do this? We can only do that, yeah, by looking at what are the defects that we have. And as I criticize what the 3M is all about, this is a good book that all of us must read. It says the fourth education revolution will artificial intelligence liberate or infantile humanity. And the author says this, the factory mass teaching methods of the third revolution era has failed to conquer, you don't see that, enduring problems of inequity and also unfairness. And this is what the state of education today, that is reflected in the state of society today. And therefore, we need now to actually move that to that. And the only way I see to move it is to understand what the global wants is all about, and that is reflected in the Sustainable Development Goal. It is 17th Sustainable Development Goal that will allow us to, quote-unquote, humanize education at the same time. So the COVID environment for me has opened up my eyes to say that it is not enough. We need to translate from this to that. And we can only do that through humanizing education, hence the actual objective of what our transformation is all about. Yeah? So, therefore, we need to bring back the soul. Education with soul. And how do you bring back the soul is a question of how we actually want to balance the KPI. We created, or at least I created this KIP, the key intangible performance, that will balance the KPI. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. And the issue now, as I said, it is about how do you create the balance. Yeah, we've talked about balance earlier. How do we create the balance so that the balance will be the issue that we will talk about as we crafted the post-COVID environment, which will happen anytime once this whole issue becomes settled in the context of the medical sort of dimension. Yeah? So that's the big picture. I'm sorry if I rush you through, but we have not much time. But we'll go through this again as I visit you in your kuliah, hopefully maybe from the middle of this month and so on and so forth. So, just to also reflect this, as I was reading, there's this quotation from Minskus, with Minzi, yeah, in the 300 BC that talks about, without a mind directed by compassion, one is not human. Again, another philosophy, another culture talks about almost the same thing. Yeah? To be human, you need to be compassionate. If you're not compassionate, at least according to this guy, we're probably not human. We're inhuman, and at least the environment will be inhuman in this particular respect. So we are now at the stage of where do you go and how do you deliver this? We have got our own roadmaps, yeah? And now we are trying to work on another document which you will see very soon, yeah, and to understand what Sejahtera is all about. If Sejahtera to me is a linchpin for the post-corona or COVID virus, then we need to develop a full idea of what this Sejahtera is all about. We have done a monograph on this, and I am very happy to announce that Professor Kamal Hassan has done another monograph on Sejahtera. Yeah? It is a complete manuscript, which inshallah will publish before the end of the month, and his title is The Malay Concept of Sejahtera from an Islamic Perspective and Introduction. I think he gave a very August lecture some 2 weeks ago. I think some of you might have listened onto it, but it is a complete text with reference and so on and so forth. So we need to work out another sort of idea of how we're going to bring this concept in the context of post-corona. And I would like to also urge all of you, people coming from different nations, I'm sure every nation has got an equivalent of Sejahtera. Africa has got Ubuntu. Yeah? Japan has got Ikigai. Korea has got Nunchi. Sweden has got Lagom. What have your culture contribute on this? So as you learn about this, and if you can also introduce what your culture and your community talks about in the relevance of Sejahtera, then we can assemble a lot more ideas of how we're going to construct the post-COVID world. And that is our contribution. We don't need to wait for other people to tell us what to do. We can then work together what we want to create as far as the coronavirus, post-coronavirus is concerned. Yeah? But what we have agreed as far as this is concerned is to understand where is the focus, that we want to create what we call the balanced human person, and that is translated as Insan Sejahtera. You can see the word Sejahtera has already come into picture. Yeah? Then we want to create the balanced staff. We want to create our own environment, our own institution, our own research, yeah? And our own global relevance. In other words, we need to go a full cycle from the individual to the global scenario that we talked about. Yeah? And that will be the part of the strategic plan that we have laid out. Yeah? But that now is no longer sufficient because we have got a new factor coming in. How much of this is going to influence the strategic plan that we have laid out? And this is an assessment that we need to do. And in fact, we are doing it now, and we are trying to adjust some of the things that we have agreed so that it can be more real in terms of its translation. Yeah? But what is immediately important, I think, was basically to look at the kind of focus that we're going to have. This is a strategic focus. If you remember, there are 3 layers of this, but I just want to talk about the first layer, which is important. And the first layer talks about institutional readiness. In other words, if you want to perform as a global institution, a global university, an international one at that, yeah, are we ready institutionally? By that, in other words, I'm asking, are we familiar with what the elements that makes the university? To start off with, are we familiar with the idea of integration, Islamization, and internationalization? I've been here 2 years, yeah? But each time when you talk about IICE, different people give me different interpretation. Different people give me different articulation. In other words, there's no consistent way in trying to understand what IICE is all about. Yeah? But of late, we begin to understand that IICE actually is a summary of the 7 missions of IIUM. I'm not too sure whether you still remember the 7 missions of IIUM. That is the one that we need to translate into reality. Yeah? The 7 missions, if you look at the 7 missions now, how much of the 7 missions has been translated into the university after 37 years? That's a question that we need to ask. Forget about the IICE at the moment. Yeah? Because the reality is about making the mission into something that is tangible. Right? By chance, when we talked about RCE and ESD, that is actually met in the 2nd mission. If you read the 2nd mission of IIUM, it talks about, among other things, sustainable development. In other words, sustainable development has been talked about this in the university 35 years ago when you have your mission statement. It is not new. Although it may be discussed just last 2 years, but it has been there for the last 35 years or so in a document, oh sorry, not 35 years, from 1965, maybe about 12 years ago. Yeah? In a document that was produced by Professor Kamal himself. And that document says, this is a mission that we need to meet in the year 2020. And alhamdulillah, for mission number 2, we have actually met it in the year 2020. And I begin to feel now that unless you understand the 7 mission properly, then our journey ahead will not still be very clear. So I'm going to insist that we now go back to the 7 mission, understand it, and try to articulate it. Yeah? As far as 7 mission is concerned, as far as sustainable development goal is concerned, we have now met mission number 2 and mission number 6, if not mission number 7. Yeah? So we have cleared 2 missions. We have got 5 more to clear in the next 2 years, and I hope we can work on this. Yeah? From that mission of sustainable development goal, then we begin to understand what a sustainability-led campus is all about. It is not just about United Nations goals, it is also about the goal of IIUM. It is not about the secular agenda, it is also religious and Islamic at the same time, if you relate it back to the mission of the university. And this is why it is important to go back to the second mission. Yeah? We need to understand a little bit about Maqasid al-Sharia and how does that relate to the national education philosophy. We've talked about that. Yeah? There's some underlying principle of the national education philosophy that talks about devotion to God. What does that mean? And this is where the Maqasid is going to come in. Yeah? You need to understand exactly what the garden of knowledge and virtue means. It is not just a tagline. It's a whole meaning into it. And we need to understand this. We need now begin to understand what leading the way means to us. So in other words, beginning this year, all of us must understand all this so that we can be institutionally ready. If we don't understand this, then we will not be institutionally ready. That is the thing that we have decided that we need to move now to make sure that everybody have the same idea, the same interpretation, and the same view to move ahead given these concepts and rich idea that has been given to us, and we need to make a meaning out of it. Yeah? Only then we can now begin to look at what does the rest mean to us. Once we are institutionally ready, we can be organizationally ready. In other words, all your processes in the kuliah, in the department, in wherever it is, will be realigned to what the institution means to you, because now you have got an in-depth understanding of what this is all about. You are not groping in the dark anymore, you are not guessing anymore, but you know exactly what it means. Yeah? And then we can begin to look at the outcomes in a more positive way, and finally arriving at this idea of humanizing education. And that is where I think we begin to make it real as far as globally is concerned. So that is one move that we are looking at. Yeah? Some centers now have been assigned to work on this, and I think there's a group of people who are also writing the modules for it so that we can be, quote-unquote, reacquainted again with what we're supposed to do as far as this university goes. We talked the last time about sustaining IIUM post-2020. We are now going to talk about IIUM post-2020, also post-COVID, a new factor that has been. Yeah? We talk about how we're going to change our structure. Yeah? In the video, they were talking about this holacracy, leadership and management, right? We also talked at the other time was about how do you actually run the university in a different way. We talk about the new meeting format, yeah? And we also talk about the kind of autonomy that we're going to give it to you to work with the university. Little did we know, once the COVID comes in, we are exactly talking about the same thing. The new meeting format is exactly the Zoom, the virtual interaction that we're going to have. All right? When we talk about autonomy, suddenly there's a new word, working from home. I use working from anywhere. It's not just home. Yeah? Anywhere you are, you need to work, and therefore, this is a new way of working, forced onto us by the COVID sort of factor. Yeah? We talk about looking at a total academic review, yeah? Taking other dimensions, including public intellectual, including open access, open resource, and so on and so forth. Now we're adding on to it, we need to revise some of the action that we do, the ta'aruf now. There'll be a new module of ta'aruf, including the institutional readiness that we talked about, and we are now assigned CPD to be, quote unquote, the secretariat for this, so that all of us will have to go through the same courses or the same training or the same discussion that CPD will organize for all of us to do. So these are the additional points that we talk about in terms of the post-COVID thing. Yeah? We talk about community impact, which I think we all agree on community engagement and so on and so forth. But the new ideas that are going to come here is about mental health. It's a real problem that's going to come, whether we are ready to sustain this, whether we have moved it into the right direction, we have done some credible work. How are you going to work on this? Not only just mental health, but the whole question of hygiene. How do you want to embed it when we talk about moving forward as an institution, making impact on the community as such? Yeah? So we begin to talk about education 2030 in a shared vision, I think including the SPV, shared prosperity vision that the government is trying to promote. But in our context, we need to redefine what we call another form of learning. We talk about co-learning, we talk about co-creation. I want to introduce COVID learning. What does COVID learning mean? C means we need to work collaboratively, cooperatively, no longer competitively only. In other words, we want to break off the silo. You need to work with as many people as possible. To do collaborative learning, you have to have some openness. That O is about openness. Willing to share. Yeah? Willing to listen to criticism. Willing to work together. Willing to forget your silos. There's a kind of openness that we want to advocate. Yeah? And openness in the context of what? In the context of values that we share. It is not because I want to do this, because we share the same values. Okay? And that values was defined in the context of institutional readiness that we talked about. I is inclusiveness, your istiqamah, yeah? And D is about diversity. How do you, as you work together, how do you maintain this diversity so that we are not homogenized also at the same time, leveraging on different ideas, different views, and different perspectives at the same time, making learning and enrich sort of a way forward. Yeah? So that is our sustaining post-2020 and post-COVID at the same time. And these have now been discussed. I think for the last 2 months we've been discussing on this. We are hoping by September we begin to already introduce some of these ideas, at least at the first stage, and then we moved on as we develop this further and evolve it into something that we think it is proper for this university. Yeah? Let me try and demonstrate this, what I mean when we talk about COVID learning. The example that we can give now, we are confronted with another enemy that we do not see. Meaning to say, we cannot attack them tangibly. If you are so used to work with tangible things, this is something that you're totally paralyzed. The United States has a good army, missiles and all sorts of things. And they are the losers in COVID because all the missiles are not used. It's useless in a sense. Yeah? So we need to change our mindset. And the only way to change our mindset, if we go back to what we have been advocating, we need to work together. The work is social solidarity. I emphasize it is not social distancing. We need to work together regardless who, where, what, and how. And how do you work this is something we need to think about. But very minimally, we can work together. If you are this kind of person, that's one of the dean of the kuliah maybe, yeah, trying to get rid of the COVID alone, good luck to you. Yeah? You will never win this game until and unless we work together. And the only way to work together is very simple. All of us keep a level of cleanliness, a level of hygiene. That's the first front line. If you cannot maintain that, then the rest becomes more difficult. Yeah? And this is where I think Hafiz will be advocating mask, washing of hands and stuff like that. And this will be then, again, be relived in the context of the renewed normal that we talked about. Yeah? And therefore, instead of moving into individuals, we need to now gain a kind of understanding of what level of cleanliness we are talking about. Yeah? And this, again, I've been talking to Dato' Wan with Daya Bersih here. The last article that I read, you can clean your toilet just by using baking soda. I don't know whether they've tried this. Yeah? Apparently it works better than all the things that you have been buying for tens and ringgits. If you work with a baking soda, you can probably get it clean better. So we need to come into a consensus what is cleanliness as far as the university is concerned. Yeah? How do you then put this into practice, not only at the kuliah, at the mahala, and everywhere else? That is a simple answer, so that we create a social solidarity, and if we need to do a lockdown, we will do a lockdown. But alhamdulillah, this is now over, hopefully. Yeah? But the last thing that we need to come back to this whole question of values. So what is a value proposition as far as moving ahead is concerned, as far as cleanliness is concerned, as far as all the other things that we are working together? How can you work it together so that we have the critical mass, we have the full impact, and we can deliver in the best way and how we know how. Yeah? So that will be the kind of understanding that we want to have, and hopefully in the shortest period of time we can go back to our normal way of living within the new values that we have adopted moving forward. I want to bring you to a book that I've read some time ago by Pink, and it is called A Whole New Mind, Moving from Information Age to a Conceptual Age. Information age is there, but I think we need to move into another way of looking at it. Yeah? And it says this, I think the one that strikes me is this: a material abundance that deepens our non-material yearning. This strikes me. Although KPIs is important, but what is yearning within us is a non-KPIs. Is the iman, is the things that we cannot measure, that makes us not the things that's around us. And the powerful technologies eliminating certain works, and we are entering into an age animated by the new form of thinking. A new form of thinking is the one that we are trying to get post-corona. What is that new form of thinking? Yeah? And it says here, in a new world where aptitude for high concept, high touch is highly prized. Remember my third H, my 3H. Yeah? The last one is high touch, it's about compassion. And that is a concept that I think we need to bring up to create the new mind, to create the new thinking where we can now live together in a better world, as it were. And he continues by saying that high touch defines the ability to empathize. That's a second value that I talked to you about. Yeah? With others, understanding the subtle yearning and the interaction of human beings working together, yeah? And pursue beyond the everyday for the new purpose and the new meaning. I think the search for the new meaning is what we are lacking now. We are taking things at face value without understanding what the meaning is all about. Yeah? Triple ICE, for example. Unless and until you know what the meaning is, in the 7th mission, we will be stuck there for the next maybe decade or so. We need to find and rediscover this new meaning, as it were. So I want to bring you back and ask ourselves, what is the new meaning for the KPIs? Yeah? Some of you have heard of it, some of you have not heard of it. We have heard, first thing, this is the blessing that I've got when I was in IJN for 3 days. I happen to have a book called Stillness, and as read through the book, this thing comes jumping out of the page. Yeah? It says when you are in a state of stillness, in a peaceful state, you will go into a state of leisure. All right? And the state of leisure is not an absence of activity. Normally when we talk about leisure, it's about kita lepak, not doing anything, idling, yeah? Daydreaming, all right? Sleeping perhaps. That's part of leisure. But this book tells me the word leisure comes from the Greek word, schole, I don't know whether I pronounce it right. But what it means in Greek, the meaning of this word, is freedom for intellectual pursuit of higher things. That is leisure. Leisure is not wasting time sleeping and idling or daydreaming. It is a pursuit for higher intellectual pursuit. And I was very surprised by this, and I go back and read it a little more, and it says if you do leisure well, it will take you to another position called gratitude. We are thankful. We are grateful. We want to give back. And that's the higher purpose of this leisure. The rethinking of how you give back the moment you have got so many that you want to pay back to the things that you have got that was given to you. All right? And that relates me to what we talked about earlier, rooting Sejahtera. When we talk about Sejahtera in the context of its 10 dimensions of well-being, right? We talk about Sejahtera in the context of Surah Ibrahim 24:27. Once a value are well-rooted, you begin to give other people just like a tree that is well-rooted. The fruits, the flowers, is for everybody to enjoy. There's not a single cent that you need to pay for it. Yeah? So I begin to craft this whole idea of KPI by having this thing in. How do you go into this higher intellectual pursuit so that we have a better sense of magnanimity to give it to other people so that other people can also benefit from what you have got. In other words, leisure is a high state of working, not an ideal state of working. And therefore, it could be part and parcel of the balance that we talk about when we talk about KPI. Right? The other way of looking at it, and this is something that we have worked on for a while, then I just put it in. When you talk about education right now, some books say this is just the tip of the iceberg. Maybe the 10%. The 90% is under the water that we can't see just as much as the root is under the ground that you don't see. Yeah? The moment you go underwater, you begin to see all the different dimensions of the intangibles, starting from the spiritual right down to the cognitive and the environment and so on and so forth, that makes up what Sejahtera is all about. And we are working on this now. How do you actually manifest this in the context of competencies? The 10 dimensions of well-being is the one that supports the iceberg, the tip of the iceberg, as it were, and that is now situated in the kalbu or the heart, as we understand, as a seat of intellect for moving education forward. Yeah? So these are the articulations that we are beginning to think, beginning to read, and beginning to write about, and I'm very grateful again. Yeah? From Professor Kamal, once he talked about Sejahtera in the Islamic dimension, he talks about Al-Falah. Al-Falah, not Al-Falah do we understand it, a deeper meaning of Al-Falah. And we are now going to work this on, and hopefully this will be the new dimensions that we will add on to moving forward IIUM in the context of an international and global university. Yeah. This has been talked about for a long time. I think this literature was there when I first started looking at it in 1997, yeah, when they talk about the new organization. Yes, there is the tangible, but the intangibles are becoming very, very, very clear. Yeah? And the intangibles, of course, from the business dimension, it talks about things of this nature. Yeah? R&D, software, database, network, consumer, supplier. This is the other dimension of intangible assets. Yeah? But the KPIs become the same thing. The education, the experience, the talent, the values, the idea, something that you can't measure. And now this comes back to me and say, maybe this is what we need to work on. The deeper part of the iceberg, as it were. So, just to convince you, these are some of the literatures that you see, intangible assets, yeah, cannot be touched, cannot be feel and see, and these are called intangible assets. In other words, all these assets which don't have a physical existence are known as intangible assets. You can see this. Oh, sorry. You can see this one here. Patent, all these are intangible assets. But goodwill is part of the KPI, I thought. because this is something else that goes into all the other dimensions in Sejahtera that we talked about. And if you are still not convinced, this is one literature that talks about how the intangible assets has moved. This is in the early 80s. Now by the mid-90s and by the year 2000, people are measuring intangible assets much more than they measure the tangible asset. That is a new world that we are getting into. But how many of us are attuned and understand what intangible asset is all about? Intangible values are all about. Whether we like it or not, this is a trend that says that in the last 20 years, the source of value has shifted to the right from the intangible, for the tangible to the intangible, tuning points at around, a turning point at around the year 1990s. In other words, a lot more understanding of the intangible assets. So whether you like it or not, the understanding of what intangible is all about becomes a mandatory thing for us to move forward. So I'm trying to compare what is then these intangibles and the KPI, which is the tangibles. We are so used to this. It's about numbers, it's about economics, it's about, figures and so on and so forth. But what else that we need to do? We need to start and to balance the KPI with the KIP. To balance the KPI is what we are trying to do now, is to cut down what the KPI is all about. Cut down meaning that you need to determine what is your KPI, not us. Because you on the ground, you know better what the KPI is all about. So that the KIP can grow. And from the definition that I talked to you earlier, the KPI, the KIP would mean this. The KIP means you need to choose what your leisure is. The university is not going to tell you, because the strength depends on you. But be assured, it is not a state of idleness. It's not a state of just sitting around, and enjoying yourself without anything constructive coming out. It is more of mental work, intellectual work coming in, so that the human soul becomes more endowed in the context of being gratitude, in the context of giving back, in the context of gratefulness. This is what the whole idea of the KIP is all about. It, at the end of the day, embodies peace. It gives you a kind of a fulfillment. It gives you a kind of a state of being thankful, right, to whoever gives you, and certainly to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is not about money. It is not about fame. Neither is about wealth. It is about you being a human being needs to give back, because that is the state you are in when you talk about being compassionate, right? But certainly nobody is going to supervise you, and therefore you can cut corners. You're welcome to cut corners. You are welcome to cheat. You are welcome to do whatever manipulative thing you want to do to show that you are working when actually you are not working. That honestly depends on you. That's the kind of human being at the end of the day will tell who you are and what you are. You are welcome to do this because nobody is monitoring you. Of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is monitoring you. So this whole idea of KPI becomes a very august and a very noble idea of how you want to balance your work, yourself, with what is given externally, but this is internally. Yeah? And this, if people like Peter Drucker talks about, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. That gives you to the KPI. Yeah? A very well-known. That's the state of Sejahtera. Yeah? And Prophet Kamal introduced another word, which I really like. The opposite of Sejahtera, according to him, is Sangsara. Sangsara. Yeah? So if you don't have Sejahtera, you'll go do in this concept of Sangsara. Right? And that, if you don't balance it well, then you may go into one state or the other. That is the quotation that I picked from another philosopher at the 3rd century BC. He talks of, if an action tires your body, but put your heart at ease, do it. In other words, it is about internal values rather than external values. And how do you put this in your work process is something that I think we need to talk about and learn how to. So at the end of the day, what the university wants is to balance these two. the KIP and the KPI. If you just want to work on the KPI and not the KIP, then you will go into the samsara state rather than the sejahtera state. This is something, again, that we want to discuss and develop further as we moved on. Again, this is another thing that I was lying down in the hospital, and I thought to myself, how do I measure life? Yeah? And I begin to coin this on the 12th of June. Life is not measured by the numbers of heartbeats, yeah? But by the moments that the heart skip a beat on cloud 9. Cloud 9 is a state of happiness. And that is life measured by the level of happiness. It doesn't matter how many beats that it beats. It doesn't matter. That moment is what we want to capture. And that is the moment that we want to bring into life when we talk about this university, when we talk about our achievements, when we talk about the achievement of the university, not just numbers, but the experience that we had gone through and shared this with other people. So what Peter Drucker said to me does not make sense anymore, because I can measure or I can experience another sort of life that is not dictated by numbers, figures, or anything of that nature. Very quickly, this is also to talk about something that, this happened some 6 years ago when the World Economic Forum talks about the outlook of global agenda 2014, and you can see here the lack of values of leadership is one of the trends that we are worried about, all right? And of course, the other one is about this, the rapid spread of misinformation online. It was 2014, this become manifested now. We will talk about this a little bit later. So if leadership is the issue and values of leadership is the issue, then these are the consequences of it. If there's no value in leadership, you begin to see there's no trust. A lot of arrogance, a lot of, cold shoulder kind of thing, all right? Very abrasive, very intimidating, a lot of fear coming into the organization or working with people within the organization. All things I think needs to go if you want to move into another way of looking what the university of like when you talk about humanizing education. Yeah? I want to talk about the 4 things that we talk about. So we talk about leadership in the context of Khalifa. How do you define it? I try to reword it. Yeah? So Khalifa to me and all the other things are the intangible vital forces, which is the amana. Yeah? That cannot be seen or touched, but their presence can be discerned, and that's part of the ikraq that we are reflecting on. By the inner being, the effect is felt by members of the community when it is transformed accordingly for the better towards sejahtera, living in peace and harmony with gratitude in the universal way, which is rahmatan lil alamin. Can we understand leadership in the context of our own song in this manner? I'm just making a suggestion. If we can do this and craft it better, it'll be good for us to understand what leadership is all about in the context of moving values forward. Yeah? Now, when I read this literature on the 7 trends, on the 10 trends of 2014, and zero in on the lack of values in leadership, this is what I found. It says education is the key to the changing of that lack of leadership, lack of values in leadership. Because while we can't change things immediately, which is for sure, we should at least be able to try and understand what's happening. And this is why we go back to the institutional readiness. Try to understand that, and how do you move this forward. And complain if you don't like it. Well, we hope you don't complain, and do something about it. And when enough people do that, I think this is a critical point. Critical mass builds, and a group of people will emerge with the agenda for genuine change. We need to create this critical mass. It is not just a group of people or a group of community. All of us must be involved no matter where you are. Unless and until we have this critical mass, then something will not move. And that critical mass will come in the context of how much we understand together moving forward. So we are going back to education, and I would like to end my slides by, well, there's the other survey when they do that. They ask a survey, out of the 10 trends, which one is the least done? And I think the survey says most are least satisfied with the attention that the government gives to the lack of values of leadership. Reflect on this. Yeah? is the country undergoing through this lack of values in leadership? Maybe not this only country, it's the whole world. People like Donald Trump and so on and so forth. If it is a problem, then let's try and address it and bring back the values the way we want it to be. I want to take this into what we are going through now. I think you all must have read this, yeah? Particularly Facebook, but all the other social medias are involved. More than 400 companies are withdrawing from many of these platforms as far as advertisement is concerned. And why they withdraw, they use this stop hate for profit. Most of these platforms still spew the language of hatred, while the world wants to consolidate and bring this solidarity that we talked about. The social media are making this thing difficult because they are still projecting this message of hatred across the world, right? These are some of the companies. I think some of these are familiar to you. Yeah, the latest one is Coca-Cola. Latest one is Starbucks, I think, as I've moved in to withdraw. There are more than 400 companies now. But it's not just a commercial thing. I just want to underline, it is organized by major civil rights groups. The civil rights groups now are trying to bring cohesion back into community, but they are not able to do it until and unless social media and those kind of platforms also play the game at the same time, right? Now, I thought this is a moment for us to reflect as a university. We do not have advertisement, we do not have money invested in those things, but it's still incumbent upon us to stop this whole idea of dividing people together to hatred or to whatever means, yeah? And as we go through this, we see some of the impacts on this, right? Why it is important? Because people build on trust what they read, right? And at the end of the day, then that trust becomes an influencer for them. Now, if that information is not right, then the influence that exerted may be a negative one. And I think this is where the university now needs to understand what happened to our students when they go into the social media. Are they participants of this? Are they part and parcel of these people who spew hatred at the same time? Yeah? And when we talk about the social media, it is more than just hatred. We have got fake news, we have got all sorts of other things. Yeah? You know, for Prof. Norbit, yeah, I made an article, say, big data, but bigger lies. How they cherry pick the data that they want, how data biasness comes in, so that they actually meet the objective that they want to do by selecting data that belongs to us, or at least aligned to their thinking so that they meet the outcome, regardless whether it is ethical or otherwise. Yeah? We're familiar with the old saying, lies, damn lies, statistics. Now we've got big data to contend with. So these are issues that I think the university needs to engage, particularly when we move into high-tech, information, and all these other things that we talked about. Yeah? Therefore, we want to take a stand of a definitive zero tolerance against the use of social media platform for hateful or other falsified rhetoric. All right? How do you do this? And we have had a discussion. Because education is sensitive to values, and because values are portrayed in information, IIUM wants to differentiate on ethics. In other words, we will only support information. We will only support data. We will only support knowledge if there is a well-ingrained values that is aligned to us. The values that we talked about, that bring solidarity, that brings people together, that create peace, that create sejahtera, that bring harmony. Other than that, we do not want to support it, neither are we interested in this. Yeah? So after a big discussion, we come out with a tagline called "To Lead for Peace." To lead for peace is what the university is all about, leading the way. To lead is about leading the way. For peace is what we talk about, the rahmatan lil alamin, the sejahtera, and so on and so forth. So this is a platform that I hope that we will use it in our ta'aruf and all the other things, that we want to move our students and ourselves. When we talk about social media, we will only talk about what is valid to us in a positive way. The negative ones, we will just not support it, and we don't want to participate. I know it's difficult to say boycott social media. It's not the intention to boycott social media, but to realign our behavior so that social media will also look at positive value as an influencer, and therefore they will move along those lines using our tagline to lead for peace the way we want to frame it. Yeah? So I will stop there, and I just want to remind you that on the 8th of July, there'll be a ceremony in New York at about 8 o'clock in the morning. We will be viewing it here virtually at 8 o'clock at night, when they will announce who will be the champion for this Sustainability Institution of the Year. Hopefully it's IIUM. And who will be the champion for the Benefiting Society project, which is led by Kaed. Again, I hope it is IIUM. But after saying that, I think the chances of winning, I think, is quite high after looking at what is going on. But just in case we don't win, if our risky is not there, I think this is already a good endorsement of how we have managed to arrive this in just 24 months. Yeah? The last winner of this, if I'm not mistaken, Sustainability Institution of the Year, it was University of Edinburgh. The University of Edinburgh has been attempting this for 7 years before they get this championship last year. Yeah? So if Edinburgh had to do 7 years, IIUM, kalau boleh 1 year, Alhamdulillah. Kalau tak boleh, we still have a chance, insyaAllah. We will work on very hard on this. Yeah? So on that note, I want to end by thanking you once again. This is almost my report to you after 24 months almost here in the university, what we have done, what we have achieved together, and what we can achieve more if we work together better moving ahead. So I'll make dua to Allah Ta'ala that we are given all the blessings and all the the energy and the hidayah, so that we can work together after this in a more concerted way, taking this university up, inshallah, for the best university that we can think of. So thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Tan Sri, for the inspiring address. Tan Sri, please remain on stage. Okay, distinguished brothers, distinguished guests, brothers
My
and
name is
sisters.
Ibrahim Hajjar, and I'm from Kuliah of Islamic Review Knowledge and Human Sciences.
My name is Farida Hanim from Ahmad Ibrahim Kuliah of Law.
I am Mona Hafizulli from Kuliah of ICT.
From Kuliah Islamic
This is Zamzamil Amin bin Muhammad Nasir.
I'm Muhammad Arif from Kuliah of Engineering.
I'm Arnie from Celpet.
I'm Siti Mariam binti Jafri.
I'm Nur Amira binti Kamarul Zaman
from OSEN.
Hi, I'm Hamizah bint Adnan. I'm from IHWC.
I do support To Lead for Peace campaign.
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 The hashtag To Lead for Peace.
I'm supporting hashtag To Lead for Peace.
Hashtag To Lead for Peace.
To Lead for Peace campaign. Thank you.
How about you guys?
Distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, the university would like to stress that we practice physical distancing. We need to be physically distanced, but not socially. Hence, as an encouragement to promote this campaign, the Rector will present the physical distancing bunting to the university's representatives to spread this campaign. I would like to invite Professor Dr. Isarji Haji Sarudin to be on stage to accompany the Rector. I now would like to invite Professor Dr. Ahmad Hafiz Zulkifli on behalf of the Sultan Ahmad Shah Center at IIUM. Thank you, Prof. Next, Yang Berbahagia Dato' Abdul Rahim Ahmad, Executive Director, Management Services Division. Thank you, Dato'. Next is Professor Dr. Kamaruzzaman Yunus, Director of Kuantan Campus for Kuantan and Gambang campuses. Thank you, Prof. Next is Madam Hafsa Muhammad Yusuf, Director of Student Affairs and Development Division, representing Associate Professor Dr. Zulkifli Hassan, Deputy Rector, Student Development and Community Engagement. Thank you, Madam. And finally, Professor Dr. Isarji Haji Sarudin, Deputy Rector, Academic and Industrial Linkages. Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Tan Sri. Alhamdulillah, we are now approaching the end of our program this morning. Let us now sing the IIUM song together, leading the way. Please stand.
Let's lead the way, lighten the future, share the wisdom to the spirit of Islam. Revelation and reason, we shall excel, we shall prevail. Merging faith and knowledge, we the Khalifa, we will fulfill the amanah. Together we make the world a better place. Forever expand the culture of Iqra. IIUM is to realize the meaning of Ramadan al-Amin. Together we make the world a better place. Forever expand the culture of Iqra. IIUM is to realize the meaning of mercy to all worlds for mankind.
Thank you. Please take your seats. Now I would like to invite Ustaz Idros bin Mustaqim, Senior Religious Assistant from Office of IIUM Shah Mosque, to recite the dua. Falyatafaddal mashkura, Ustaz.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahilladzi lahu ma fis samawati wa ma fil ard. Wa lahul hamdu fil akhirah wa huwal hakimul khabir. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. اللهم أنت ربنا لا إله إلا أنت خلقتنا ونحن على عبادك ونحن على عهدك وعدك ما استطعنا نعوذ بك من شر ما صنعنا نبوء لك بنعمتك علينا ونبوء ذنوبنا فاغفر لنا فإنه لا يغفر الذنوب إلا أنت. The praise be to Allah, to whom belongs all things in the heavens and on the earth, to whom all praise in the hereafters are due, and He is full of wisdom, acquainted with all things. Almighty Allah, Lord of mercy and beneficence, bless this IIUM Al-Liqa Al-Jamaie number 2, 2020, with your pleasure and mercy. O Allah, Lord of bounties and infinite, shower upon us your divine guidance, that our work and deed be done in completeness and excellence. Assist, O Allah, in fulfilling our obligations and seeking your pleasure. Ya Allah, ya fa'al ma yurid, fallahu khairun hafiza, wa huwa arhamur rahimin. Fallahu khairun hafiza, wa huwa arhamur rahimin. Fallahu khairun hafiza, wa huwa arhamur rahimin. Allahumma ghfir lana dhunubana wal ikhwan allazina sabaquna bil iman ولا تجعل في قلوبنا غل الذين آمنوا ربنا إنك رؤوف رحيم. اللهم اجعل جمعنا هذا جمعا مرحوما وتفرقا بعده تفرقا معصوما ولا تجعل فينا شقيا ولا محروما إنك على كل شيء قدير. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين. تقبل الله منكم.
Amin ya Rabbal Alameen. Shukran jazilan Ustaz. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, before we leave the hall, on behalf of the organizer, I would like to thank Honorable Tansiri Rector, the University Management Committee members, and all IIUM staff for your presence here this morning. May this gathering invoke us to work harder and for the betterment of the IIUM and Ummah, inshallah. Again, observe physical distancing with social bonding, stay safe, and to lead for peace. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
مولاي صل وسلم دائما